And unless you've been living under a rock on Mars for the last 48 hours, you'll know that CM Punk made his triumphant return to WWE at Survivor Series following the War Games main event. Punk received an incredible ovation from the Chicago crowd, but how did this return happen? Well, there's plenty of news that has come out since he appeared in the Allstate Arena. PW Insider reports that Punk has officially signed with WWE, and Fightful Select notes that Punk and Triple H had an hour-long talk on November 19th that helped mend the fences between the two sides. As for Punk's deal, that came together over the last week during the initial communications, but the official agreement for his return didn't technically happen until the day of the event. The contract, which is now signed, is several years in length, and while details remain scarce, it's expected Punk will wrestle under his new deal. There were talks about delaying Punk's return until next year's Royal Rumble, but sources have suggested that waiting until January would have led to leaks within WWE about their plans. Instead, WWE rushed Punk's return, allowing him to only drive about 20 minutes from his home to the Allstate Arena, a venue with great historical significance to the Chicago-made wrestler. Punk has made a lot of history in the Allstate Arena, including at Money in the Bank 2011, and now he has a brand new moment to his name. Survivor Series was Punk's first WWE PLE appearance since the 2014 Royal Rumble, as his work on WWE Backstage with Fox in 2019 never saw him at a premium live event. But who helped bring Punk back? Well, we know of Triple H's involvement, and Fightful Select reports that the pair had a second Mending Fences meeting after the initial meeting on November 19th. There's a lot of history between the two, and PW Insider adds that Nick Khan played a role in Punk's return, while Vince McMahon had zero say in bringing Punk back. CM Punk was able to mend fences with Triple H, but judging by Seth Rollins' reaction to Punk at Survivor Series, who was seen flipping the bird and cussing out Punk in Chicago, the World Heavyweight Champion isn't so ready to forgive. Fightful Select adds that the drama didn't end there, as Rollins had to be ushered away by Triple H and Michael Cole as the World Champion was looking for Punk backstage. This left WWE's newest signing confused and created an awkward scene backstage, with many in the company unsure as to what was going on. Punk did not appear at the following night's WWE live event, but Rollins competed on the show and would make references to the Survivor Series incident in the closing moments of the event. After the main event in Peoria, Illinois, Rollins briefly addressed Punk's return and seemed ready to move on from the straight-edge superstar. "I'm not going to waste any more breath on someone who's been gone for 8 years and done nothing but try to tear this place down. I want to use my breath to talk about the people who work to make WWE the hottest ticket in town." Rollins didn't name Punk directly, but everyone knew who he was speaking about, and Rollins added that he wants to concentrate on those who have been there all along. Between these comments and Rollins' Survivor Series reaction, there's been questions as to how these two can coexist in the company, which is exactly what WWE wants fans to feel. On Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer stated that this is 100% an angle, one that is playing off Rollins' comments in January that Punk is a cancer and WWE doesn't want him. Later on, though, in one of the interviews, Rollins said that if WWE wants him and it's the right thing for business, he doesn't have a problem with a Punk return. Given the harsh language of his first comment about Punk, which went viral in January, WWE have decided to make an angle of things, one that is blurring reality and kayfabe. It's worth noting that while Rollins is a professional, he still has animosity to Punk, who would often put down WWE in his years away, and he's not the only one with an axe to grind against Punk. Fightful Select notes that multiple WWE superstars have expressed their displeasure over Punk's return, in stark contrast to the response he received by the fans in Chicago. At least one top talent was genuinely upset by Punk's comeback, and there's a sense among some that Triple H has eroded the trust with colleagues he had built over the years. Ringside News was told by a tenured member of WWE's creative team that CM Punk did not speak with any members of the roster prior to his return angle, as things were kept hush-hush backstage. Punk's return was therefore a huge surprise, with Fightful's Sean Ross Sapp adding that WWE staff, reps, and creative had no idea he was returning. While Punk walked backstage in plain sight minutes before he appeared on TV, they had cleared an area out, making sure that as few people saw him as possible. There were behind-the-scenes meetings involving Triple H, Michael Hayes, and Bruce Pritchard, and when the time came, Triple H took charge of producing the show to keep as few people in the know. Triple H was the one who called for the WWE copyright graphic, giving the illusion that the show was about to go off the air, and also made the call for CM Punk's theme to be played. So CM Punk's return to WWE has officially happened, and after such a historic moment, it won't be another 9 years before fans see him at his next WWE show. WWE has confirmed that Punk will be on tonight's live edition of Raw in Nashville, Tennessee, as will the Viper Randy Orton in his first appearance in over a year and a half. There's no word on what either man will do on the show, but fans are eagerly anticipating the arrival of the two former WWE World Champions. Unfortunately for WWE's writers though, Punk's return has thrown a wrench into the plans, as given that his return was kept a secret, the writers already had tonight's Raw written before Punk's return. Now there will likely be significant last-minute rewrites to accommodate his return and set the stage for his WWE future, possibly the biggest discussion point in all of wrestling right now. WWE sources have emphasized that any references to Punk, from lines of commentary to Shinsuke Nakamura using the GTS, were not made with prior knowledge that he'd be back at Survivor Series. Speaking of the King of Strong Style, Nakamura has been cutting promos in which he's been addressing somebody, and prior to Survivor Series, some expected this to be Punk. Fightful Select reports that when this angle started, Punk was not planned to be brought in, and while the angle could be adjusted to include Punk, that was never the initial intention. In fact, there aren't many people who know what Nakamura's current program is, as that too is a closely held backstage secret. As the wrestling world adjusts to the seismic impact of CM Punk's return, fans can expect further developments and surprises in the coming weeks. There's still a lot of questions about the future of CM Punk, but one thing you can always rely on is WWE trying to make money from high-profile returns, such as this one. Within minutes of Punk's return, WWE began selling some merchandise on their WWE shop website, with new shirts celebrating Punk's return to the promotion. These shirts will no doubt sell quickly, and may have already sold out by now, as we saw in AEW that CM Punk merchandise is in high demand. Speaking of AEW, Tony Khan has had nothing to say on social media about Punk's return, and Fightful Select reports that there has been almost no reaction to Punk from those within AEW. Punk left that promotion in a sea of controversy, which included being suspended twice in less than a year, and while Khan and many in AEW aren't talking, the fans certainly are. On Instagram, Khan shared a seemingly innocuous post that had nothing to do with Punk, but fans flooded the comments to remind TK of his favorite ex-AEW star and newly signed WWE superstar. During the post-Survivor Series press conference, Triple H was asked about TKO's involvement in bringing Punk back. It turns out they were also kept in the dark. There's been zero push from anybody past WWE. You know, it's myself, Nick Khan. To be honest, very few people knew about it past that. It's very funny, really, because now there's this mystery entity behind WWE. Yeah, we're doing our thing, and we're trusted to do our thing, and we're trusted to do what's right for business. To be honest, the top people in TKO were probably watching the show going, holy shit, it's a good thing. Triple H wrapped up by saying it's a crazy cool time in WWE, and that he's excited to do things in the biggest way possible and keep building on what Vince McMahon made into a global juggernaut for over 50 years. We'll have to see what happens with Punk from here on, as there's a ton of interest from wrestling fans, and it was clear that Punk's very fast return was something very few people knew was happening. Of course, WWE aren't the only promotion around, and prior to his return, it was reported that Impact, soon to be TNA, were very interested in CM Punk. It's unclear if an actual deal or offer was in place, because the general belief is that they would have been very far apart on money. PW Insider reports that Impact believed they were close to getting Punk to sign a deal with them, and it's reported that a major money offer to Punk was made, one that he was considering. It was also said that Punk had great talks with higher-ups in the company, and there had been hopes back in October that he would make an appearance at Bound for Glory. While Punk attended the post-Bound for Glory tapings, he did not appear on any Impact broadcast, and that certainly won't be happening now. Instead, CM Punk will be appearing for WWE going forward, and now that he's back, WWE fans have their eyes set on someone very close to the best in the world. On Twitter, AJ Lee's name was trending following Punk's return, as fans shared their hopes that she'll follow her husband back to WWE, and it's not just the fans getting involved. When Cora Jade shared a video of her younger self meeting Punk, Roxanne Perez recalled a talk with her former friend, saying that Jade had once told her she'd incapacitate Perez if she ever shared the video. This got a response from Jade, who tagged Lee and told the former Divas champion to handle this, and both Jade and Perez have spoken in the past about taking inspiration from AJ. AJ Lee last competed for WWE in 2015, and many fans remain hopeful she'll return, and with CM Punk back in WWE, we know never to say never when it comes to shocking returns. The wrestling world has been talking about CM Punk from the moment he appeared in the Allstate Arena, and the former superstar Matt Riddle shared his 2 cents on Twitter. In a tweet, Riddle mocked the idea of Punk joining WWE, saying that if the company thought he was difficult to deal with, they should have fun with the 0-2 Punk. The 0-2 is referencing Punk's UFC record, though his second loss was later ruled a no contest when his opponent failed a drug test, but with comments like these, don't expect WWE to be rehiring Riddle anytime soon. As we've mentioned, very few people knew about CM Punk's return, but a recent post by Stone Cold Steve Austin has led some to suspect that he was part of the inner circle who knew. Shortly before Survivor Series, Austin shared a photo of chickens on his vehicle, saying it was a chick magnet, which is a phrase that Punk has claimed the CM in his name stands for. Punk was even in a team during his indie years called the Chick Magnets, and while Austin may have simply been having some fun with the rumors of a Punk comeback, perhaps he knew much more. Odds are Austin won't reveal if he knew about Punk's return ahead of time, but one wrestler who is talking about Punk is Ryback, who has once again used Punk's name to try and get attention. Ryback has taken digs at Punk for years, ever since their 2012 feud, and before Survivor Series, he promised to retire from wrestling if Punk returned. When that happened, Ryback said he meant to say if Punk returned to AEW he'd retire, and has now said he'll hang up his boots if Punk's comeback to WWE lasts longer than 6 months. Even if that happens, it's unlikely that Ryback will keep his words, despite him already being effectively retired as he's not worked a match in years, and has shown no signs that he'll be doing so soon. Ryback will likely continue to troll fans online, while CM Punk will be one of the most featured wrestlers in the world, as the wrestling world remains on the edge of their collective seat as to what's next for Punk and WWE. How do you think Punk's return to WWE will impact wrestling, especially when it comes to the competition between WWE and AEW? Are you excited to see him back, and what role do you want him to play? Share your thoughts and predictions in the comments below, as CM Punk is back in WWE and will no doubt have an effect on the wrestling industry. After Survivor Series, Drew McIntyre was in no mood to stick around after his War Games main event match, as he stormed to the back and slammed his locker room door immediately after the bout. McIntyre threw on a hoodie and immediately left the Allstate Arena, and PW Insider adds that McIntyre made such a loud and obvious situation that it became a subject of conversation in the hour after his exit. It's believed that McIntyre storming out was due to genuine anger at CM Punk's return, as while Drew left the ringside area before Punk, he and the other wrestlers in the main event had been told of his comeback. At the Peoria event, McIntyre cut a promo on the video screen for the live fans and made reference to the reports of his storming out. He said, "If you've been watching the show, you know why. I lost the world title match, War Games last night, my stupid team lost the match for me, you probably heard things on the internet." McIntyre then stated that one thing that could improve his mood is if he can win the WWE World title once again in Peoria, which ultimately didn't happen, as Seth Rollins retained in the main event. McIntyre seemed genuinely pissed at Survivor Series, but like the Seth Rollins situation, we can't rule out that this could be a work. It's entirely possible that Drew was instructed to storm out to seem genuinely angry at Punk, setting up a potential feud, just like how Rollins was teasing a feud with his reaction at Survivor Series. Whatever the situation is, McIntyre's actions as of late have garnered a ton of attention, and we'll just have to keep our eyes on WWE and what's next for the Scottish Warrior. During Survivor Series, there were questions as to whether Randy Orton was going to be in the main event, but sure enough, the Viper arrived to the War Games match for his team. This was Orton's first match in over a year and a half, as he spent that time away due to a serious back injury, but the Legend Killer has no plans on hanging up his boots anytime soon. In a video from the show, Orton can be confidently seen declaring 10 more years, hinting that he will have another decade in the ring before he calls it a day. When Orton reached 20 years with WWE last year, he said in interviews that he wanted to have another decade with the company, but that all hinges on his body being able to last. Another decade of Orton would give him plenty of time to have new feuds, and perhaps the 14-time WWE World Champion could break the record of 16 title reigns shared by Ric Flair and John Cena. Orton is currently 43, so he's looking to retire at 53, and would you like to see him continue to wrestle to that age? Or do you think he should retire far sooner than that? Orton was part of the victorious team inside War Games, and after the match, the veteran told Cody Rhodes something that couldn't be picked up by the microphones in the arena. During the post-show media scrum, Cody was asked what Orton said to him, and revealed that the Viper had thanked him for making the call, asking Randy to be the team's 5th member. If they'd had time, Cody would have told Orton thanks for my career, as he explained in the press conference that he would not have gotten as far in wrestling without his old legacy teammate. In fact, Cody recalled winning this year's Men's Royal Rumble match, about that Orton won in 2009 and 2017, and said that as he pointed at the WrestleMania sign, he wanted to be just like Orton. Rhodes' Royal Rumble win didn't result in him being world champion, but many predict he'll have another shot next year. And we're sure that Randy Orton will be watching closely if that match happens. As we previously reported, Stephanie McMahon was backstage at last weekend's Survivor Series, and it turns out that the former chairwoman of WWE got closer to the action than first thought. In fan-recorded footage, McMahon can be seen at ringside when Bayley had a confrontation with a young fan, adding further credence to reports that Steph was just there to enjoy the show. It was a few months back that Jade Cargill signed with WWE in a Blockbuster acquisition, and the former AEW star was featured on Raw, SmackDown, and NXT after her debut. Since then, though, Cargill's appearances on TV have dried up, and there's no word on when she'll compete, but that doesn't mean WWE have lost faith in the talented young star. Speaking on the post-Survivor Series press conference, Triple H was asked about Cargill, and made it clear that WWE are taking careful measures before they pull the trigger on her. He said, "I have no less belief in her now than I did when she signed with WWE. It's interesting. When she came in, we talked about her development and where she would land. I want to make sure that whatever is thrown at Jade Cargill, she's ready. And at no fault of her own, I think she was limited in that, right? The idea is, we exposed her and made her be seen. People are understanding and waiting, and they're excited for her to come, and when she does, it's going to be massive. I just think we're making sure that she's ready. I don't want a pitch to get thrown at her that she's never seen before. I want, no matter what that pitch is like, for her to crack that thing out of the park. You can just see it in her. That's the presence she has. That's the star she is. You've yet to see her do anything in WWE, and yet I could probably name 5-10 people where you go, well, that's a dream match, without her doing a thing. So I'm in no rush." As to what Cargill does next, WWE are keeping plans close to the chest, but there are some who predict she'll be making her in-ring debut in the Women's Royal Rumble match in just 2 months. Big things are expected from Jade Cargill, but only when she and WWE believe she's ready. And how do you hope to see Jade Cargill used when she's brought back to WWE programming? Since his AEW debut at WrestleDream, Adam Copeland has been at odds with his former best friend Christian Cage, who has been holding the TNT Championship for some time. On the latest AEW Collision, Copeland issued a challenge for the TNT Championship for the upcoming December 6th Dynamite, which will take place in Montreal, Canada. This will mark Copeland's first title shot since coming to AEW, and his first title match in wrestling since challenging for the WWE US title on the February 20th, 2023 episode of Raw. The match being in Copeland and Cage's native Canada adds a new layer to the bout, but the fact that it'll be in Montreal may mean that there are some shenanigans set to unfold in this title match. Copeland has vowed to take everything that Cage holds dear, and that includes the TNT Championship, but will he do just that on December 6th in Montreal? Time will tell. Back to WWE, and Rhea Ripley is known as Mommy for a reason, as the reigning WWE Women's World Champion has a legion of fans who'd love nothing more than to get up close and personal. During a recent live stream with Xavier Woods, Kofi Kingston, and Tyler Breeze, Ripley was asked to sign an autograph, which also featured the message, "I licked here." Sure enough, Ripley signed and licked the piece of paper, which was then put up for auction and fetched a staggering $580 when the auction was finished. In the past, WWE used to have special kiss cards, trading cards that have been kissed by the divas, but Ripley is no diva, and took things to the next level with her licking this past week. On the SmackDown prior to Survivor Series, Carlito was written out of his match with Santos Escobar for the PLE, and the former US champion was replaced by Dragon Lee. This would have been Carlito's first singles match at a premium live event since Unforgiven 2007, but why exactly was he pulled from the match? On Wrestling Observer Radio, it was explained that WWE always intended on Lee being the one to face Escobar, and that despite the Carlito match being announced, there were no plans for him to wrestle. Carlito being written out with an attack was neither a last-minute decision, nor was it due to an injury as some have speculated, but it's unclear why they promoted Carlito in the first place. Ultimately, Lee lost to Escobar in the first PLE singles match for both men on the main roster, and we'll have to see what Carlito makes of all of this on Friday's edition of SmackDown. When the Undisputed Era came together in 2017, the group quickly became one of the most dominant factions in WWE history, all without ever being called up to the main roster. Instead, the faction would remain in NXT until 2021, when the group came to an end at the hands of Adam Cole, but there were once plans for the Undisputed Era on Raw and SmackDown. Speaking to Wrestling News Co., Bobby Fish said there were times when it was discussed, but isn't sure how earnest those talks were, saying, "It's above my pay grade." Looking at when the Undisputed Era and other NXT talent appeared on the main roster in 2019, Fish said their work was well received, but ultimately a proper call-up simply never happened. Fish has said that the Undisputed Era was split prematurely, and while many members of the group are now in AEW, Fish is no longer working for Tony Khan and will watch his allies' careers from outside the company. While Dakota Kai has been appearing on WWE TV, the Damage Control member hasn't been getting physical due to suffering a torn ACL earlier this year. Despite this injury, Kai has been able to make shows with her stablemates, leading some to suspect that she is faking or at least exaggerating her injury, which couldn't be further from the truth. On a Twitch stream, Kai addressed detective fans who think she's faking the injury. She said, "Bro, you want me to be in a wheelchair until I'm cleared? That's not how rehab works. I'm able to run and jump. This isn't a shocker." I'm like, why would I do that? Why would I choose to sit on the sidelines? Like, no one wants that. No one wishes that on anyone. But I'm able to, I can run, I can jump. It's not like my leg is amputated, but rehab is just one of those things where, in all sports, no one is getting back into play like before 6-7 months. Certain places have things that they have to abide by, like certain medical teams. For us, it's usually like 8 to 9/12 months, depending. During a stream in September, Kai said she hopes to be back wrestling in January or February of next year, but that will all depend on her foot and what WWE's medical team have to say. Until then, Kai will still appear with Damage Control, who seem poised to kick Bayley out as a member, and despite what some believe, Kai's injury is nothing but legitimate. And we're ending today with Finn Balor, and while the Judgment Day member may be a heel, he recently made a young fan's unusual dream come true at Survivor Series. After the show went off the air, the Judgment Day were making their way backstage, and Balor noticed the fan who held a sign reading, "Rip my sign." Finding it amusing, Balor grabbed the sign and had JD McDonough do exactly as requested, and Balor gave the young fan a fist bump for good measure. Balor may be a heel, but he, like all superstars, wants to give fans a great experience, and the reigning Undisputed Tag Team Champion did exactly that last Saturday in Chicago.